Welcome to Museum Moments. I'm Dan Humschild, the Education Director at the Jewish Museum Milwaukee, and today we have a very special opportunity to speak with Judith Rosenbaum, CEO of the Jewish Women's Archive. Judith, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be back with the museum.
Yes, that's right. This is your second appearance on Museum Moments, is it not?
Yes.
Wonderful. And today we're going to talk about the 100th anniversary of the first Bat Mitzvah. And I'm wondering if you could kick us off by telling us a little bit of the story of Judith Kaplan.
Sure. So 100 years ago, on March 18th, 1922, Judith Kaplan became the first bat mitzvah in America. Now, there were some bat mitzvah-like group ceremonies that had happened before in Europe and in Egypt and in a few other places, but this was really the first time that a girl was called up as a bat mitzvah, as a kind of singular celebration. Judith Kaplan was 12 years old. She was the daughter of Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan, who went on to found Reconstructionist Judaism. At the time, he had just started a new congregation called the Society for the Advancement of Judaism. And part of what he wanted that community to be was really a place of innovation. And part of that innovation meant greater roles for women. So he thought, what better way to kick off my new community than to introduce the idea of bat mitzvah. He also happened to be the father of 4 daughters. So this was something that was an issue that was close to his heart. And he was known to say that Judith was the first of 4 reasons to create bat mitzvah, and the other 3 were his other 3 daughters. So this was something that was meaningful to him. It was certainly, kind of radical at the time, but it also didn't look like a bat mitzvah today. So first of all, Judith Kaplan only found out exactly what she was doing at the service the night before, which I'm sure would cause a great deal of anxiety in any young people hearing this right now, who might be trying to imagine having only a few hours to prepare. But she knew Hebrew well, and she was a musician. She actually went on to become an ethnomusicologist. So she was able to kind of get up to speed. She was not called all the way up to the Torah. She was called up to stand below the bima, so to stand in the men's section of the synagogue, but below the kind of podium after the Torah was put away. And she read her piece of the portion from a printed Torah from a Chumash. So she didn't get to do some of the things that many young women do today in terms of actually approaching the Torah scroll and saying the blessings before and after reading, but it was still quite a special moment. The other difference between that and kind of bat mitzvah as we know it now is that it was meant to be a celebration of coming of age, but not yet something where she would have the opportunity to continue to participate in ritual life. So there wasn't yet an idea that, just like a bar mitzvah where a boy might do these things for the first time, and then the assumption is that he has the ability to do those things again in his community. It took a long time for bat mitzvah to not only catch on, but also to be something that opened up the door to full participation going forward.
Yeah, I'm interested in that in particular, because it seems that this very easily could have fallen into some sort of token gesture or token moment, but it seems to have had some reverberations and implications. Obviously, today, bat mitzvah is a fairly common practice, but I'm wondering if you can expand on what the reverberations and implications of this moment were, and how this kind of spread.
Yeah, so bat mitzvah really became kind of a revolution in Jewish life because of girls themselves who started to point out, like, why do you even want me to do this if you're not going to let me continue to use these skills in the community? Like, why am I allowed to do this once but never again? And why are women in general not allowed to do these things? They also started to ask a little bit later on, like, why is what I'm allowed to do for my bat mitzvah often different from what a boy is allowed to do? If we're getting the same education, why shouldn't we have the same right in terms of how we celebrate? Because it really took decades before, really until the 70s, before what bat mitzvahs did, what a bat mitzvah consisted of was similar to a bar mitzvah. So often bat mitzvahs were held on Friday night instead of Shabbat morning. Often girls didn't read from the Torah. They might read part of the Haftarah, the kind of prophetic reading. Sometimes they just didn't have the same kind of level of celebration. It might be a kiddush after services in the synagogue as opposed to a big party. So it took a little while for those changes to happen. It also took a while for bat mitzvah to kind of catch on more broadly as something that was a kind of given as part of practice. And that's what, as you were saying, is sort of hard to imagine now, because now bat mitzvah and bar mitzvah are sort of seen as these quintessential Jewish ritual experiences, these rites of passage. And that really wasn't the case for decades. I mean, Judith Kaplan's bat mitzvah was in 1922, and it really wasn't until sort of mid-century that it became more common for bat mitzvah to be an expectation in many congregations. So it actually caught on most slowly in the Reform movement, because the Reform movement had a little bit given up on bar mitzvah in favor of confirmation. So it took them a while to decide that, okay, maybe we'll go back to bar mitzvah and bring in bat mitzvah. The conservative movement started integrating bat mitzvah in sort of the 50s and 60s, but it really took, as I said, until the 70s before those became more kind of equivalent ceremonies. And again, that was really because girls advocated for themselves and mothers advocated for their daughters. Part of what I also love about the story of bat mitzvah is that mothers learned from watching their daughters, and they realized, hey, if my daughter can do this, then I should be able to do it too. And so they started to create adult bat mitzvah classes where they would say, well, I didn't get to have a bat mitzvah when I was 12 or 13, but I would like to learn how to do this now. And they also began to advocate for other kinds of rites within the synagogue. Some of those ritual rites, like being able to count in a minyan and a prayer quorum, or being able to be called up to the Torah, but also things like being able to be president of the synagogue or serve on the board. So there's a nice kind of generational, reverse generational learning there.
Yeah, I'm sure every parent listening to this can understand what it's like to learn from your children, right? I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I learn stuff from her every single day. So.
Yeah, it's amazing.
In 2 days, JWA is hosting a national celebration of this anniversary, and I'd like to hear more about that so our constituency can get involved.
Sure. So we have been partnering for months in planning this celebration of this 100th anniversary with SAJ, which is used to be called the Society for the Advancement of Judaism. That was Kaplan's synagogue where the first bat mitzvah took place. It's now known as SAJ, Judaism that stands for all, and it's still a really innovative and great congregation in New York. So we've been partnering with them. They have an interest in the story because they were the place where it took place, and they're celebrating their 100th anniversary. And JWA was really excited to celebrate this because we're all about Jewish women's history, and this seemed like a great opportunity to tell this particular historical story, and also even more special to kind of talk about how it continues to, the revolution that bat mitzvah sparked continues to unfold today. So we felt like the most important way to celebrate this was to echo the way that bat mitzvah developed, which was really on a grassroots level. So, bat mitzvah didn't come as a top-down thing where a movement said, we will now have bat mitzvah be part of the life cycle events, and then congregations took it up. Instead, it really happened here and there all across the country, where you would have a community that was kind of interested in trying something different, or, a particularly excited family that wanted to promote it, or a rabbi who had daughters and wanted to introduce this. So we decided to create a national Shabbat that will be celebrated this weekend, March 18th and 19th. And we wanted to provide a whole range of resources for communities to then mark this anniversary in the way that feels most organic to them. So we created educational resources so that Hebrew school classes and adult education classes could learn about this moment. We created special liturgy that Rabbi Lauren Graybell Herman, who's the rabbi of SAJ, developed so that congregations can do interesting things to call up and honor bat mitzvahs, past and present, in their communities, and pioneers of all kinds. We created just a whole range of resources, some oral history tools, because we felt like part of what we want to do is continue to document the history of bat mitzvah and capture all these incredible stories of the different ways that women and girls made this ritual their own and changed their communities. And so we have story collecting prompts on our site and in our story collecting app, which is called Story Aperture. so that you can either write or record your story and submit it to JWA and help build the historical record. We also worked with SAJ on a really fun Instagram project that created video diaries of Judith Kaplan as she was leading up to and preparing for her bat mitzvah. So reimagining her teen experience using the tools of today's teens. And that's been super fun. You can find that on Instagram at Judith Kaplan 1922. And we're kicking it all off with a big event on Thursday night, which is happening at SAJ and also online. And we will have a little reenactment from the actress who plays Judith Kaplan in those videos. We'll have a whole bunch of rabbis, Rabbi Carol Balin, who is writing an amazing book about bat mitzvah, and many other rabbis talking about some of these changes and how change happens and the role of women and girls and feminism in transforming Jewish life. So that will be really fun. And all of this can be found at batmitzvah100.org. Tons of resources there. We have also lots of background information for people who want to teach or speak about this. And I feel like did I leave something out? Oh, the other thing that's exciting is that JWA also created a new podcast episode about the history of bat mitzvah, which is actually being launched today. So you can always check out JWA's podcast, Can We Talk, and find that story as well as many other exciting stories.
Wow, that's fantastic. So it seems that, to reiterate, it seems that you're really trying to continue inspiring this sort of grassroots movement and more of a localized understanding of how bat mitzvah works in one's community, to then, just share resources ultimately and share information about how this movement can continue to grow and spurn positive change, essentially, right?
Absolutely. And, the issues around bat mitzvah, the issues that bat mitzvah raised around who, gets to count, who gets to lead, those are still really relevant questions. In some communities still around issues of women and girls, sometimes on issues of gender more broadly. There's a lot of conversation now about, how do we adapt bar and bat mitzvah to fit gender non-binary kids? And so there's a lot of conversation about, how do changing conceptions of gender shape the way we understand our rituals. And also there's so many conversations about inclusion more broadly. If bar and bat mitzvah are going to be considered entitlements of every Jew, then how do we make it something that's actually accessible to every Jew and where everyone feels like they have a place and can participate?
Wow. Well, that's amazing and wonderful work. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're already out of time for Museum Moments. I'm very inspired and excited. And can you just tell us one more time the website that people can go to register for the event, which is March 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern time?
Yes.
What's the website again?
It's batmitzvah100.org.
Fantastic. And for those of you who are watching, you can check the links below this video and click on them. They'll send you to all these resources that we've been talking about. Judith, thank you once again for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Awesome. Bye-bye, everybody.